All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. This morning's presentation, Online Teaching, What the Literature Says, is with Ryan Hazen from Carroll College in my home state of Montana, and we're excited to have him here to present. He also wanted me to mention that he is a classically trained organic butcher. And also he had mentioned that he was a former junior high teacher. So I'm wondering which came first, the butchery or the junior high teaching? So,
junior high teaching.
Yeah, obviously. So no further ado, I'll turn time over to Ryan and he can wow us.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Yes, and I'll try not to draw too many similarities between sausage making and public education for the butcher-teacher combination. So what I'm here to talk about is what the literature says about online teaching. And so I came to this because it was requested that I teach an online course about online teaching in our self-hosted Moodle at Carroll. And so this course wound up being called The Fundamentals of Online Teaching. And one of the things that I needed to do to lend validity to what I was talking about was find scholarly literature that supported the principles of online teaching that I presumed to teach. So this course took 8 weeks. It was divided into 4 learning cycles. We had 5 readings, 4 activities, 12 discussion posts, 4 assignments, 4 evaluations, and 4 journal entries. Now, this slide oversimplifies vastly what we actually did. It makes it look a lot easier than it was. But let me move on, and I want to talk about, well, what literature? So I'm presuming to talk about online teaching, what the literature says. Here's up front my bibliography. I'll talk more about these individual items when I get to them. But one of the things that I noticed about the literature is that certain things started to emerge. And there's this idea that we can identify competencies for online teaching success, or we can have 9 principles for excellence in web-based teaching, or we can have 10 principles for effective online teaching. So people naturally wanted to take online teaching and reduce it to a set of principles that they could then share with other people. So what emerged? Well, I thought that it would make sense if we reduced some of these principles and tried to combine them into sort of a composite set of even simpler principles that we could talk about, so sort of umbrella sections of what's important about being an online teacher. The first principle that I sort of came up with was to be present. And I'm going to just give you a few things. First of all, this is one of our pieces of literature. Lawrence Ragan from the Penn State World Campus wrote this 10 principles document. And in the vein of being present, we had show up and teach, practice proactive course management strategies, and establish patterns of course activities. These ideas were borne out in other pieces of literature that I surveyed. This Henry and Meadows article, which was 9 principles instead of 10. These guys from the University of Lethbridge. Sense of community and social presence are essential to online excellence. And number 9, sometimes the little extras go a long way. What they mean by little extras are personalized messages from the teacher and interactions with students that remind them that the teacher is in fact present in that online classroom. And since we use Moodle at Carroll, I felt it was necessary to incorporate some of Martin Dougiamas' work, the creator of Moodle. He's a pedagogist, fundamentally, but also a computer scientist. So Moodle was developed in the process of his studying what online learning is really all about. And so this is really indicative of what it means to be present. So the instructor of this course, to give you a little context, this was in 2003 that this particular document was written. It was part of Martin Dougiamas' PhD work. And he had this instructor, Peter, interacting with students in a social constructivist way. So one of the important things is, I want to read this to you. Based on his close reading of students' journals, the instructor kick-started discussions by posing carefully crafted questions designed to engage students in deeper conceptual development. And during the discussions, Peter actively moderated discussions as he strategically posed further queries and dilemmas and advanced organizers linked to the forthcoming topic. So this is a practice really clearly defined that this teacher, Peter, is socially present in the learning environment. So how do you deal with this? Okay, if you're not present, what do your students do? Well, they toss the book over their shoulder and walk away because they don't have the specific directions and expectations to engage with your learning material independently. So how does being present fix this? Well, when you set up view by times, patterns of course activities, and precise, clear expectations, your students have a better framework upon which to manage their time. So maybe that party is still happening, but when you've told the student, okay, this assignment is due maybe on Tuesday, but it's Monday today, I want you to view this by 6 o'clock. That changes the game a little bit because it gives that student more time to engage with that material than they would have otherwise given themselves. This is not just make your due dates earlier. This is establish a time when you want your students to have viewed this lesson by. And Moodle conveniently comes built in with the ability to message students who have or have not viewed an assignment or have submitted, or it's a really complex messaging system that's quite useful. But when you establish those view by times and you have engaging online material, your students don't walk away from the learning until they're done because the learning management system tells them when they're done. They don't decide when they're done reading their book themselves. You have learning activities and you're present to the point that you say, this is when you are done engaging with this material. So Eric Hall is a professor of theology at Carroll, and he was participating in this online teaching course that we just wrapped up, this 8-week-long course. And here's what he had to say in one of our discussion forums. First, I was skeptical of the view by times. I shook my fist at E. Ryan. Then I found these view by times helped me. If I actually viewed by a certain time, I inevitably began reading and reflecting a bit, giving me more time than I otherwise would have had to engage the material. I believe it also upped the quality of my appropriation of the material. I take back my initial fist shaking. I was really proud of that right there. So let's get back to these principles. So I've talked about being present. So what emerged, I'm sorry, let's go back here. So what emerged in terms of being engaging? What does it mean to be engaging? Well, Martin Dougiamas, in the same 2003 article, describes cognitive engagement and how they map that out for their students. For each topic, students were required to read 2, sometimes 3 papers and make journal entries reflecting on professional implications was reserved as the main subject of subsequent discussion forums. We encouraged everyone to respond to each other's stories and issues in ways that helped the original poster reflect on their professional practice. So in terms of engaging students with this content, they're not just reading and absorbing the material. There's this very clear imperative that you have to get the students engaged with that material in some way. They have to do something with it and roll it around in their mind. In terms of Henry and Meadows' article, these guys from the University of Lethbridge, these are some of the principles that came out that I think are related to this. In the online world, content is a verb. That means the content has to do something. You have to be engaged with that content. It's not static, it's moving, it's an action. Sense of community and social presence are essential to online excellence. And again, sometimes the little extras go a long way. That's a really interesting principle. I'd encourage everybody to read this article and see what they mean by the little extras. And then finally, Lawrence Ragan in this 10 Principles document, Help Maintain Forward Progress, is about feedback and like having students continually coming back to the material in cognitively appropriate ways that move them forward in their appropriation of the material. And then finally, this is a really interesting article, Bigetel et al., again from Penn State World Campus. Lawrence Ragan was involved in this article too. And some of the core competencies, some of the things that you should do online is encourage active learning, give prompt feedback, emphasize time on task with view by times often, and students must be actively engaged in learning activities. So what does this actually mean in terms of engagement? Well, for me, there are fundamentally 2 types of engagement. There's cognitive engagement that engages your mind with the material that you're learning about. And then there's social engagement, which engages you with the other learners into a community of inquiry that makes you feel socially connected to the people that are in your course. This is particularly important in the online course because we don't have the informal opportunity to develop social relationships with people in a physical classroom. It's really important to keep in mind. But first, let me talk about cognitive engagement. Again, another piece from the literature. This is from a 1991 higher education report, Bonwell and Eisen. I really like this definition of cognitive engagement, especially in context of online learning, because this does not have anything to do specifically with online learning. This definition is just about cognitive engagement for your student. So in order to be actively engaged, students must do more than just listen. They must read, write, discuss, or be engaged in solving problems. More important, to be actively involved, students must engage in such higher order thinking tasks as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Active engagement, therefore, can be defined as instructional activities involving students in doing things and thinking about what they are doing. So I want to focus on these two parts first for cognitive engagement. They must read, write, discuss, or be engaged in solving problems, and they have to be doing things and thinking about what they were doing. How do you make this happen in the online world? Well, it's really quite simple. You have to think about breaking up knowledge and comprehension activities like lectures, videos, and readings into smaller chunks, and then you have to insert opportunities for the students to use that material and engage with it. I say every 5 to 20 minutes. You'll get a wide variety of how long the human attention span is in the modern world. I find 5 to 20 minutes to be a good rule of thumb. Some people are like, it's exactly 7 minutes. You have 7 minutes to deliver content before you have to break it up. I don't buy that. I think 5 to 20 is pretty good. But anyway, what this looks like is in the online world, if you have a piece of content, like let's say a video that you're having students watch for 5 to 20 minutes, that has to be followed by some sort of engagement activity, something that they do with that video. Your question, students type their answers here. Then you can re-engage them with the content. After that, do another session of content, maybe a web article, and then have the students engage with that web article in some sort of online learning activity. So basically what you're doing is you're acting as a facilitator for the student to guide their own way through the content, and you have to show them every step along the way. So let me get to my next slide here. The other thing about these learning activities is that you can give formative assessments in these learning activities and automated feedback where students actually get a response to how well they're appropriating the material, and you can target feedback to students, especially in Moodle's lesson and quiz modules. I know other LMSs have this built-in automated feedback, but a lot of people think of these activities as just summative, like I'm going to give you a quiz on this material that you learned. These assessment activities should be used first and foremost to form the student's understanding of the concept rather than just to give them a grade. So here's what another one of the professors that participated in this course had to say about it. There we go. So Maria Brosnan is a nursing professor, and oh, this wireless network is messing me up. So Maria Brosnan is a nursing professor at Carroll, and here's what she had to say about these engaging learning activities. This has been a great opportunity to experience the role of the student. I've gained a better understanding of the types of learning activities available on Moodle, as well as how these activities can be implemented to achieve different learning outcomes. I have really enjoyed the short videos followed by the various activities. I've noticed how much better I understand the information after completing these activities. So this, we're really encouraging metacognition in this course, like how are you engaging with this material? How are you learning? How does it affect you? These are from personal journal entries or discussions that were part of the course. But this is spontaneous. This isn't an evaluation question. This is a spontaneous discussion that's happening in relation to these articles that we're reading. And so what she's talking about is I had little video lectures that I had made using Camtasia on my desktop. And I broke them up into pieces and had engagement activities in between those pieces of the videos. And the response was, wow, this works. Like, I have the opportunity not just to watch the video, but I have to do something while it's happening so that my brain is actively, cognitively engaged with that content. So let's talk about social engagement. This is the thing that people don't get about online learning and how important it is. So social engagement, Martin Dougiamas, again the creator of Moodle, had built it on the framework of social constructivism. You might know it as maybe the community of inquiry model or something like that. But what Martin had to say about social constructivist teaching practices is that they, first and foremost, privilege a focus on collaborative discourse. They apprentice learners into communities of practice that give them the opportunity to test and try new things. Encourage individual development of meaning through construction and sharing of text and other social artifacts, so you're actively sharing the things that you've done. And then, like I said, apprentice learners into communities of practice which embody certain beliefs and behaviors. So you absolutely have to be a positive role model for those students in terms of engaging with the learning material. And again, there's the citation for that. So here's another part of social engagement, targeted messaging. I don't know if a lot of people think about this, but I think you should message students before and after every due date, regardless of their engagement or non-engagement with that particular piece of material. And here's what it looked like in the online course. I would say if you, first of all, this is what Moodle looks like in terms of, okay, I want to see assignment 1, and I want to see who is a student that in the last 2 months has, well, what is it? All actions. You can choose view or post. So I'm just saying, hey, Moodle, can you tell me who's looked at this and who's posted? And then when I'm ready to say Billy, student, and myself did not view this material, I can just say, I want to send a message. Okay, bang, and then I'm going to send a message to everybody who's I've checked out of this list. So that gives me the capacity to send almost eerily personalized messages to students who have not viewed the material. Here's one that I sent in my online teaching course, and here's what it sounded like. Hi, I see you didn't complete your evaluations for evaluations 1. I had to put a 0 in the gradebook for this activity. No big deal, though. You have 3 more chances to improve your evaluation grade, which is 15% of your course grade. I hope you choose to participate in this part of our next course cycle. Do remember that much of our course, especially the evaluations, are for the benefit of both you and your classmates. When you choose not to provide feedback when directed, it shortchanges your classmates that are expecting that feedback. Remember that we're all working together here and we depend on you as much as you depend on us. You can review the feedback you left for your peers by visiting Assignment 1 and Evaluation 1. Thanks for reading, and don't forget to complete your reflective journal entry before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, March 8th. I'm excited to see what you have to say about the course content and context of your own experience. Thanks, Ryan. The professors that got this notice wrote back to me. I'm sorry I didn't do this. I had something else going on. Can I please do it now? Will you make sure that it's open for me? That was the kind of response that I got to this targeted messaging from professors. Now, the flip side of this is you can't just message the people that didn't do the assignment. You have to message the people that did the assignment too. Hi, thanks for completing your evaluations for Evaluation 1. The feedback part of our learning cycle is important for your growth and for the growth of your peers that you evaluate. I really appreciate your taking the time to participate in this segment of the course cycle. You can review the feedback your peers left you by visiting Evaluation 1. Don't forget to post your reflective journal entry by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, March 8th. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on the content of this course in context of your own experience. Thanks, Ryan. So you've got to be constantly messaging your students to develop this social engagement to keep them rolling on your course, right? This next, I think I've got this next slide in here. Yeah, this is really interesting. Now, I was an 8th grade teacher, as Nate was telling you guys. And so I first encountered this in context of K-12. Now, in K-12, we talk about interaction ratio, which is how many positive interactions you have to how many negative interactions you have with a student, or how many props to how many correctives, you can put it that way. And this is from a 2011 report, and it's specifically about developing a one-to-one praise to behavior modification ratio. So the baseline is, in this data, I know it's hard to see from back there, but this is your ratio, this teacher's ratio of positive to negative interactions. So 1-to-1 would be here. They're having they're way more corrective action here than positive interaction in advance. And then this segment is when they started modeling positive praise to corrective action behavior ratios. And you see this gray line is student disruption. So when you start giving positive feedback to students in a regularly planned, systematic way, you'll notice that the disruption drops way down. And there's an inverse relationship to how much positive feedback you give to students to how often they disrupt your class. Now, this is in K-12, so we're in higher ed, right? And specifically online. So how does this relate? Well, it's not a far leap to take this sort of information, generalize it about how humans respond to positive and negative interactions with instructors, and think about how that's going to positively impact students' engagement with your online course. Ryan Hallows, another Spanish professor. I particularly appreciate the emphasis on social engagement aspect of teaching online. That was part of a much longer post that I should have included more from. So we've talked about being present. We've talked about being engaging. Now I'm going to move on to quality content. And this was the next sort of my 4 principles that emerged from this literature review. So quality content matters. Ragan's 9th principle was literally quality counts. Number 10 I thought was very clever. Double click a mile on my connection. That's ensuring not necessarily the quality of the content, but the quality of the delivery vehicle. You have to make sure that your LMS is working for your students. Henry and Meadows, technology is a vehicle, not a destination, and great online courses are defined by teaching, not technology. The technology is important, don't get me wrong, but great online courses are defined by teaching. So, can we do this? Did we wake? So I want to go back to this definition of active engagement. So when we talk about engaging students in such high-order thinking tasks as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, we're really talking about this fellow right here, Benjamin Bloom. Now, he came up, well, not just him, this idea of Bloom's taxonomy, which is sort of a hierarchy of cognitive activities that you can engage with content in. And in 1956, he and all these other guys got together and came out with Bloom's taxonomy. Here's the actual title of it, A Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, the Classification of Educational Goals. Now remember, this was in 1956. Bloom's taxonomy is still in the academic lexicon in a big way. Actually, if these guys had known how popular this taxonomy had been, they might have had an argument over whether to call it Hill's taxonomy or Inglehart's taxonomy, because this is a cornerstone of educational thought. So much so that they saw fit in 2000 to revise Bloom's taxonomy, to modernize it a little bit and bring it into the modern age. So how does it work? Well, higher order thinking tasks such as synthesis, analysis, and evaluation from that Bonwell and Eisen report are the top of Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive activities. They're at the top of the pyramid. I'm going to run through this really quickly for the benefit of anybody who's not familiar with this particular framework. Think of knowledge activity as being able to repeat back a fact. I tell you 2 plus 2 equals 4, you can tell me back that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but you might not be able to tell me that by extension 2 plus 3 equals 5, 2 plus 4 equals 6, etc. You've heard something that I've said and you're able to make those sounds and give them back to me. Comprehension is the next level, where you can actually understand that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and therefore 2 plus 3 equals 5, and 2 plus 4 equals 6, etc. Application is your ability to take that comprehension and use it to a real-world problem. This is the old word problem. One train is leaving Pittsburgh, and the other train is leaving Baltimore, and one's traveling at 60, and one's traveling at 40. This is like, okay, I've got a real-world problem. I need to take my arithmetic comprehension and apply it to solve a problem, right? Analysis is your ability to look at other people's application of that concept and deconstruct it. So you, the teacher, now, teaching arithmetic to kids, you have to be able to look at their math problems that they get out of that word problem and take them apart to understand their thinking. It's analysis. It's deconstructing what someone else has done. Evaluation is your ability to take that analysis and make a judgment about which one is better. You can look at 3 people's solution to this train problem and say, this one's much more elegant than the other 2. It makes a lot more sense to me. That's evaluation. And then finally, synthesis is when you've gone through this process so many times, you've done so much application, analysis, and evaluation that you're able to come up with something completely new. In this sort of arithmetic example that I'm giving you, you might think of synthesis as having used arithmetic so much that you invent an entirely new mathematical discipline, i.e. algebra. So you've done so much arithmetic that you've realized that there are these connections between the ways that numbers interact with one another, and you can develop this symbolic language to be more efficient with the arithmetic that you're doing and do more complex things. So that's Bloom's taxonomy in a nutshell. Well, how does this apply to online learning? This right here is a Bloom's taxonomy wheel. So you've got the levels, 1 through 6, here in the middle, and then you have verbs on the outside. So if I want a student to apply to be in the application area, I might tell them to operate something or to employ something or something like that. So what this wheel does is it takes Bloom's taxonomy and gives us a way to direct students into certain areas. So if I want a student to summarize, I might tell them something like, students will summarize Plato's Discourse on Love. That's a comprehension level activity. It's not going to make you're not analyzing, you're just summarizing it, sort of repeating it. If I wanted students to be in the application domain, I might say something like, students will implement the scientific method. That's application. Maybe you've learned about the scientific method, now it's time for you to apply it. If I want students to be in the analytical domain, I might say something like, students will examine the effect of the New Deal on the US economy. This isn't your ability to just tell me about the New Deal. It's about your ability to analyze its ramifications on the economy, to take it apart and try and understand it. If I want students to be in the evaluation domain, I might tell them to do something like, we'll critique rational choice theory. So rational choice theory is a sociology idea. And I want you to talk about how, is it useful? Does it actually describe what we do? So critique it and tell me how it works. So in the online world here, before I do this, in the online world, when you have a learning objective like this, what you want to do is you want to say, take this nugget of brilliantly succinct explanation of what you should be doing cognitively and place it in between your technology on the outside so that the core of your learning objective is based on real-life cognitive theory. So I might say, after reading an online article about the New Deal, students will examine the effect of the New Deal on the US economy by responding to a discussion post in Moodle. See how that works? You put the web article and the response outside of the cognitive activity that you're describing that student to do. It keeps you rooted in an idea, like I said, that's been in the academic lexicon since 1956. If anybody else is an educator, that's a long run for educational theory to be relevant still. I mean, I'm young, and I've seen these ideas about teaching come and go, especially in K-12. Bloom's never goes anywhere because it's so dang useful. So if you're basing your online learning activities on something like this, you're tapping into literally decades of educational research and practice. So, and when we were doing this online, here's what one of our students had to say about it. I've been surprised how much one can really do with an online class in terms of pedagogy. I had really thought it would be a lesser learning and teaching method. I am actually thrilled to realize how much I really didn't know and how much I have learned and can learn in regards to online learning. Again, spontaneous discussion post by a PhD professor at Carroll in sociology, Jamie Dolan, who said, I came into this class with a prejudice against online teaching. But with the focus on pedagogy, when we were talking about the stuff with Bloom's and how you fit that into Moodle learning activities, her expectations were pleasantly not met. All right, so we've talked about quality content. Here's my last little bit. Know your tools. This is huge. You can't be a competent online teacher if you don't know your tools. It seems kind of dumb, but it's worth talking about. Here's what Lawrence Ragan had to say about it. Quality counts, double-click a mile on my connection, meaning make sure that the materials work. I really like this one. This Henry and Meadows from the University of Lethbridge. A great web interface will not save a poor course, but a poor web interface will destroy a potentially great course. And then excellence requires ongoing assessment and refinement. And the one I meant to put on the slide that I didn't was that ongoing professional development on the part of the teacher is absolutely necessary, especially because the tools change so rapidly. If anybody in here is on Canvas's 3-week update cycle, you know that these online tools are going to be changing all the time, and your teachers are going to have to be constantly updating their understanding of the tools. That's just a reality. We like to say, oh, we'll train you. You know, we're going to train you to use this, and then we'll do that training and we'll be done. That's not real. That doesn't happen. It doesn't work. You have to constantly be developing your online teaching. So the cool thing about Martin Dougiamas and the development of Moodle, in terms of like Moodle was developed in context of a very specific social constructivist theory of pedagogy, was that he was building the learning management system, so he just got to make up tools while he was doing it and in response to what the students need. So, for example, tools for peer rating were added to the forums. These are still there in Moodle, a really helpful way to drive social engagement with the material. A library of emoticons and a WYSIWYG editor was added to Moodle. A new forum structure that helped focus each discussion on the initial reflective post, and a new display on the front page of the course showing the new posts and other recent activity that had taken place since the last login. These are like, they did this first online teaching course, their first cycle of it, and then they made these changes to the actual learning management system to better meet what they were doing in the course. So the modules that we talked about in Moodle, it's not an exhaustive list of modules in Moodle. Lesson, apparently, we studied lesson, that's the lesson module. So the lesson module is really cool because it's an adaptive, formative activity. You create pages, and then you can branch students out. The students click through the pages. They can have content on one page, different question types on the next page. If I have a multiple choice question on this page and you answer B, I want you to go here. If you answer C, I want you to go there. If you answer D, I want you to go over here. And you can define multiple paths through the material that adapt to the student's understanding of the content as they're doing that lesson. That's really cool. Quiz is another module that we've talked about in Moodle. Does a very similar thing, allows for automated feedback. When you choose D, I want you to see this response from the teacher. You chose D based on your misunderstanding of the concept. Here's me clarifying for you now what it is you misunderstood and why you should have chosen C or whatever. Workshop is a peer review tool in Moodle. And we use Workshop very heavily in this course. And what Workshop does, I'm going to do this really quickly, try and hang with me because it's really complex. Workshop allows students to make submissions to the module in Moodle and then grade each other's submissions using a common rubric that the teacher defines and puts in there. And then it gives them 2 grades. 1 grade for the submission, which is a composite score of what the other students rated their submission to be. And that's adjustable by the teacher. You can weight 1, or you can say my assessment is the reference assessment or whatever. So it's an amalgamation of ratings from the other students. That's the submission grade. And then there's the assessment grade, which is a grade that they get for how well they applied the rubric that the teacher defined. And this grade can be arrived at through a number of ways, but I think the best way is to say, when I do this, I'll have all the students assess, I'll assess everybody's submission, and then I'll tell Moodle, this assessment, my submission is the best one, and I want you to grade everyone else's assessment based on how similar or dissimilar it is to my assessment. So you get 2 grades, 1 for the submission and 1 for your assessment of other people's submissions. And that can be based on the teacher. So this isn't just, hey, go peer review this and fill this out and give it back to somebody. This is peer review this like authentically, and I'm going to give you a grade for how well you review this. It's really, really powerful. Scheduler, wiki, forum, glossary, database, I could go on and on about these modules. But the point is, we had to, in this 8-week course, set up and create and destroy and use all of these modules. You absolutely have to do that. I could have talked about literature the entire time, which I did, but we had to pair with each thing that we were talking about some sort of activity in Moodle that would meet that criteria. So we had not only just the Fundamentals of Online Teaching course, we had a second course that was linked to it, the Fundamentals of Online Teaching Sandbox, where all the students in the course were teachers, had the teacher role, would go in and create these activities, participate in each other's activities, mess with the grade book, do all this stuff, all under my direction from the other course, right? So know your tools, especially important. So that's it. This is what emerged from my review of the online literature. 4 basic principles. be present, be engaging, quality content matters, and know your tools. And like I said, it's a really comprehensive set of literature that we read to justify these tools. And these are what came out of our discussions. We sort of agreed on them as a group. So I think I'm early here, but that is all I have for you. Would anyone like to ask questions? Raul, Catchbox, go ahead.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hey, Tristan.
Hello.
Toss it. Oh, I hear that.
Let's talk results. You quoted a lot of positive feedback there. That's very promising. But did you notice in the analytics less dropout or higher grades or higher graduations for this course once you applied these philosophies?
I noticed that the course itself was extremely successful in terms of student engagement. That was backed up by the analytics data on how often and how long the students engaged with the learning material, and by students I mean professors who are part of this course. If you're asking, have they applied this yet? No. We literally just finished last week was the end. Like Sunday that just passed was the last day of the 8-week course. So I do not have information for you on that, but probably next year I'll be able to talk about that.
And at Carroll College, is it reasonable to expect that should this philosophy be successful, that you can compel your online and distance learning instructors to apply this philosophy?
Application is something that is, I would not guarantee that at all, because I'm not in control of what the professors do. But I want to give you, I gave a presentation about this and had some of to our faculty assembly, and had some of the people that took this course talk about it. And we're going to do another iteration of it. We're going to go through this course again. And then just this morning, I got an email from our academic dean, let me see if I can find it, that said that she had, now I did this first phase with 6 students, and she says we have 21 people signed up for the next round. So that response from the faculty is, I think, indicative that the material that we're talking about is at least valuable, and I'm really optimistic that these principles will be applied by the people that go through this course. Pretty compelling argument.
Oh. Okay. So this on? I guess it is on. I was interested in, I mean, I've heard it before, but the idea if you go content, do something with it, content, do something with it. Does Moodle allow you, or are you familiar with systems that would allow a student to customize the rate at which they are being given an activity? In other words, if you have a, say like in a STEM class where everybody, first-year students are all required to take Physics 101, but you have some people in high school who are really good at it, and it's a little slow for them, and they go through the 15 minutes or the 5 minutes, and they're like, crap, another activity, I just want to get through this. Is there a way that those kinds of students can customize the rate at which they're being asked those questions?
That is a good question, and yes, they can by just scrubbing through the video. So if you know the content already, you can go through the video, and whether it's in the quiz module or the lesson module, it allows you to advance on to the next thing. But that's not quite as cool as what Raul was talking about yesterday in terms of this open capture standard where students, the video is actually created with metadata that allows you to go to this slide or to that slide, and it gives you a display right on the left side, and the student can say, I need to go here, and it'll jump right in at that part in the video. So I would say, yes, you can scrub through just a whole YouTube video, but if you go to this open capture standard, which I'm totally looking into after Raul's presentation yesterday, you could get an even more customized delivery of content that the student's able to modify how long they spend doing that, and to get specific places in the lecture. quickly and easily. So yes is the short answer to that question.
Hey, I just want to ask a question about, you just finished your first kind of round of this. You got 21 in the next round. What kind of changes do you think you'll make in the way that you went through this activity? Is there anything you want to do differently?
Yeah. In the Know Your Tools section, I'm going to focus a lot more on the gradebook in Moodle, which is a very complex and useful tool. But I'm going to spend a lot more time on the gradebook, first of all. Secondly, I'm not sure I want to do it with 21 people all at the same time, not just because I'm lazy, but to create that social engagement piece, it's a lot easier when there are fewer students. And when you have a bigger course, you would think about grouping students to drive social engagement on a really personal level online. The grouping feature at the course level in Moodle is really useful for this. You create groups and then groupings, different groupings of groups, if that makes meta groups, if you will. And you can say, for this activity, I want these groups to do this. And you pick that grouping in the activity, and it separates it out by group. So I would focus on that. I didn't need to do that this first time because I only had 6 students, so the social engagement was easy to do. But with 21 students, I would definitely use the grouping feature and sort of cohort them up as they go through the area. The other thing I think I would do is, interestingly enough, maybe spend less time on the literature and more time on the learning activities themselves, the construction and because my imperative from the academic dean was, we want you to train professors to learn. We want to give a certification to professors to teach online. But you can't just make it up, So show me the literature, and that's what I did. So I think I would spend a little bit less time on the literature and more time on the real, on-the-ground construction and deployment of those learning activities.
So I've got one. We'll just pass it around our table here. So you talked a lot about Bloom and the revised Bloom, and I really like that model, and we know at the top of that pyramid is create, right? Well, or create. So a lot of what you described is kind of the content delivery and then reflect and kind of discuss and that sort of thing. Is there a way in your program you think that students would have an opportunity to create content themselves or to drive the curriculum in more meaningful ways that kind of empower the learners?
And that's what the sandbox was for. And so we did that. But what happened, I didn't make any directions about what content should be in these activities. I focused more on the structure of the activity. So I would say, make an activity in some people would make content, like real content that they might be able to back up and restore into their Moodle course and like deploy. But more of the people did just stuff that was, I'm going to make a quiz about bunnies or something, and just fluff content and focused on the creation of the courseware itself. I think next time around I'm really going to focus in on, I want you making content in your discipline that you are going to use. Right. And that would be my synthesis.
Ready?
Almost a connection. I think I've been conferencing for 9 years, sitting through Moodle's lectures. Thank you for getting general. So appreciate that. Well done for those of us that don't live in Idaho.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one of the things that I thought was really important. I don't believe great online pedagogy knows any particular platform. I like Moodle because we self-host Moodle at Carroll. I have a lot of flexibility. I can do cool stuff. But obviously, that's an institution-level decision, and the pedagogy should be translatable to whatever platform you're on. Thanks for pointing that out. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate your attendance, and I will see you around the conference.